The next reader, I really admire and I really like. And the first time I met him, he's been in Bangkok for a long time, since the 60s. He said, "Do you know, Jim, what the tallest thing in Bangkok was when I first came here?" I was like, I don't know, the Landmark Hotel, maybe, the FCBC. He said, no. The tallest thing in Bangkok when I first came here was me. And the second story, which Dean told me, or didn't tell me, I overheard him say, was that he once travelled from the west of Bangkok to the east of Bangkok and paid the taxi driver with 2 red shiny apples. Correct? Correct? Okay. If you try and do that now, you will get a guy with a machete, take the machete beneath his seat, and he will slice you up. And so times have changed, but Dean hasn't changed. He's as charming as ever. One of my favourite people. Please welcome Mr. Dean Barrett.
Good evening. Thank you for coming. Tonight I've decided to do something a little different. I'm going to read a couple of ballads from my book, The Gogo Dancer Who Stole My Viagra and Other Poetic Tragedies of Thailand. Has anybody here actually bought this book? I'm still trying to track down the 3 or 4 people who bought this book. It's okay, because if you do a book on poetry and ballads set in Thailand, don't bother looking in the New York Times bestseller list, you know what I mean? Like, I had an agent at the time, he said, "Dean, I really like your writing, but you know, if you're going to do books like that as well, people might not, you know, they might have a weird way of looking at your other writing, and you know, that might not take it seriously." And I thought to myself, well, who the hell's taking seriously now? So, you know, agents are weird. Okay, I'm going to read a very short ballad, just for humor, and then I'm going to read Noy of the Horny Toad, eyesight permitting. Okay, this is a short humorous one. A bar girl's lament. Nobody wants to boom boom anymore. It wasn't like this in my mother's day, when guys were happy with a hanky-pank whore. And many times I've heard my mom say, it isn't like it was before, because now customers still pay, but they don't want to boom boom anymore. One wanted to spit papaya seeds at me while I lay naked on the bed. Another wanted to use his bow and arrow to shoot a mango off my head. Another wanted me to pretend that he had just been hired, and he dressed me up as Donald Trump, and I had to scream, "You're fired!" Another gave me a whole durian and said, "Eat it, you little bitch." But in bed, when he couldn't get it up, he called me a Muktahan witch. Another brought a ladyboy and took me to dinner. In the restaurant, he clutched the Bible and screamed that I was a heathen singer. Of course, some want me to dress up as a nurse or a student, or weirdest by far, as a girl from the countryside working in a bar. But the kinkiest of all, I'm almost ashamed to say, it was without doubt my most humiliating day. Sure, I like making money, that much is true, but there are some things even I won't do. I think people this sick must come from broken homes. He wanted me to just sit there in the chair and listen while he read his poems. Okay, Noir of the Horny Toad. There really was a Horny Toad bar back in the 70s. maybe even the 60s, I can't remember. It had two huge horny toads on either side of the door. I have an old slide of it somewhere, but it's in a box someplace. I don't know if I'll find it again. I'm having a little problem. My eyesight is kind of, because of this. I think I can do this sideways if people over here don't mind. Noir of the Horny Toad. By the open door they gathered, bikini-clad and full of charm, but the tourists and the locals merely waved. Yet good Port Betty, the mama-san, had sounded the alarm. The Horny Toad was deep in debt and must be saved. They stood in sexy poses, go-go dancers with their claim of fast-paced music, pretty girls, and cheapest beer. But too many bars had opened, and despite their well-earned fame, already many bars had closed that year. Dang had winked her long eyelashes, and Knit had tried her Chiang Mai smile, and Oi had draped her hair with shiny stars. But neither Aught's seductive figure nor good Port Betty's guile could stop the crowds from seeking other bars. So the dancers here were charming, so were the girls and all the rest, and the patrons had their choice of where to play. Mississippi Queen, Safari Superstar, all argued which was best, as a connoisseur of wine might judge bouquet. Leck turned up the music and Ad hung up a flashing light. They tried all tricks they knew to make it pay. But despite their valiant effort, they knew they'd lost the fight when even Bad Debt Billy stayed away. Good Port Betty knew the end had come and fought to hide her tears, but as she spoke, her throat was full and tight. The Horny Toad lose money now and too far in arrears. I cannot help it, tonight is our last night. They'd come to the Horny Toad for work, but they'd met each night as friends. Dang spoke for all and said, we don't get in our keep. How I feed my baby now, she asked, as on many a dancer a child depends. And Dang and Knit and Dow began to weep. An old woman, nearly senile, tried to comfort each in turn. She'd sometimes cook, and when she could, she'd clean. The girls all loved her dearly, and for whatever they might earn, there was always something saved for the Beetle Nut Queen. The Beetle Nut Queen was old now, and her hair was snowy white. Yet in her youth, she danced in every show. Her red lips were stained with beetle nut juice, and she nearly lost her sight. And the girls all knew she had no place to go. They had long since left the rice fields, and go-go dancing was all they knew. And they wept for the aging Beetle Nut Queen. But in the room an eerie silence became more eerie as it grew, and they were stilled by a presence more felt than seen. No one spoke, yet all heads turned. Near the bar a figure sat. On her red and green bikini was number 44. Her long black hair was stunning and her chest was far from flat, but no dancer had ever seen her there before. Her shoes were of speckled silver, her ears were pierced with gold, and her full lips were moist and slightly parted. In her beauty she rivaled Sita, Rama's beloved and legend told, and in her mood seemed just as heavy-hearted. Above high cheekbones, her dark brown eyes explored the bar, as if remembering how it was so long ago. Beneath her smooth brown throat, her only flaw, a tiny scar. But if it gave her pain, it did not show. And on her neck, a golden chain, perhaps a gift from a favorite lover. It twisted to form 3 letters clear and bright. They read Noi, a common nickname. But as all would soon discover, nothing common was to happen there that night. With just the slightest smile, the leggy dancer shook her head, and from the beer-stained bar stool she rose. And in the quiet room, with firm resolve, she clearly said, "No way this bar's going to close." Then she climbed onto the counter and up upon the stage, and without another word began to dance. No one knew her occupation and no one knew her age, but they knew the Horny Toad might have a chance. This was not a normal dancer who might smile and move about, for her movements cast a spell on all that night. Supernal or infernal, she was the best without a doubt, and it was clear this was to be a special night. Wide-eyed tourists and tipsy locals walked by, debating where to go. They stopped so fast it seemed they must have died, and in minutes on all the platform there wasn't one who did not know, and the Horny Toad had not an empty seat inside. None had seen a girl so sexy, nor a dancer with such allure. She seemed a blur of form and wondrous flash. Good Pork Betty watched the crowd, and she knew they'd saved the bar for sure, when even Bad Debt Billy paid with cash. Whiskey beer, when all was sold, they'd order milk or wine instead. All were captives of the dancer's magic sway. Even shirts were good as gold, especially those that read, "I love you, darling, more than I can pay." Men left their haunts for the Horny Toad. Girls ignored their fortune tellers. It was said that touts abandoned clientele. There were gum and garland vendors, and men fought with flower sellers for the night to go with Noi to a hotel. There was noise and smoke and flashing lights, and many photographs were taken. But already the Beetle Nut Queen had begun to doubt. She felt Noi was more than just a dancer, and she knew she was not mistaken when any photograph of Noi would not come out. And then at last the bar was closed, and the Beetle Nut Queen had locked the door. But she saw that it was just as she had feared, for though the bar was saved, there was no number 44. Noi of the Horny Toad had disappeared. Lex said for sure she checked my girl. Dang said no, I think she's from Rayong. Good Pork Betty thought Noi was from Phuket. Nid said, I think you don't know nothing. I think you all are wrong. I sure she must be Bangkok girl, you bet. And all the girls debated how the dancer came and went and where she might have learned her sexy dance. But the Beetle Nut Queen sat still, perhaps to ponder what it meant. It was as if she'd fallen deep into a trance. Then suddenly her face grew pale and her lips let out a moan, so fearful that some ran frightened to the door. Her hands began to tremble and her voice was not her own, and she said, "That girl I saw here long time before." She rose slowly from the table and walked just behind the stairs and began to empty boxes piled beneath the Buddhist shrine. Her thin brown hands moved quickly and her lips mouthed many prayers, and if she saw the girl's strange look, she gave no sign. And the contents were quickly scattered, a collection of many years. Bar bills unpaid, love letters unread by girls grown old. Then her shaking hand touched bottom, and her much confirmed her fears, and the Beetle Nut Queen felt her soul grow cold. By their trembling friend they gathered, bikini-clad and frightened to the core, the faded photograph they'd never seen. But a most familiar dancer, her number 44, wore proudly her bikini red and green. The Beetle Nut Queen spoke slowly, though her breath was fast and deep, as if what happened long ago now caused great pain. Her eyes were clouded over, and she spoke as though from sleep, of how Noi's charm had driven men insane. She'd been captured by the camera as she left upon the stage, and yet again she gave her knowing smile. That smile had stolen the hearts of men, regardless of their age, and no dancer could hope to match her style. But if her charm beguiled all men, the rage began to build in the breast of the girls who'd lost their men. And their anger grew at each defeat until their very souls were filled with a vow that Noi would never dance again. Then came the night when the bar was full, with Noi surrounded like a queen. Men sought her love, but each was quickly spurned. But just before her turn to dance, a pretty dancer grew drunk and mean, and in her eyes a consuming hatred burned. There was confusion near the counter when the dancer rushed at Noi, her one thought to tear her antagonist apart. But though Noi saw the dagger, she seemed to glow with a secret joy, even as the blade plunged deep inside her heart. Noi of the Horny Toad lay quiet, as if she'd known her time to die. As she spoke, her blood seeped deep into the floor. "You can stop my heart from beating, but I haven't said goodbye. I'll come back one day and I will dance once more." The Beetle Nut Queen's voice grew softer, but her eyes were open wide. She knew Noi's ghost had visited the bar. For though the picture was surely taken long before the dancer died, in the photograph they could see the dagger's scar. The Beetle Nut Queen cried out, and she slumped across the table, but the girls heard clearly what she said. "I was that drunken dancer. Oh, Noi, forgive me if you're able." And the woman who had stabbed her now lay dead. It was a night of wonder, and it happened long ago, but still they dance on Bangkok's Patpong Road. And though the bar has changed its name, the legend cannot help but grow, for none who saw her dance would soon forget Noi of the Horny Toad.
Mr. Dean Barrett, ladies and gentlemen, a living Bangkok legend.